We're gonna hang tight for another 2 minutes or so. Make sure we can get a solid list of participants here. All right, it's 12:05. I like to usually start at 5 after the hour. Nadia, I don't know what do you think? I'm looking through the attendee list and what's that?
Let me check who's here.
Yeah, I don't see. I talked to the alderman earlier today, so I'm not. I'd like for him to join, obviously, but
I talked to him in the morning too, and I reminded him that it was at 12, so he should be joining.
Yeah.
I
don't see some of the usual cast of characters, so to speak.
No, I know, like Bill is not there, and just maybe wait 2 more minutes and then start.
Yeah, I know Bill would. I remember speaking with Bill last week, and he knows about the meeting. I'm sure he'd want to join. All right, I think we should get starting because, well, I don't want to take any more time. And I guess for those who were unable to join today, we can always share the recording of this meeting shortly thereafter. So I should present an opportunity for everyone to at least take in the information that was shared today. So welcome everybody, and thank you again to our consultants team who have turned out today in force to introduce themselves to the community and hope discuss sort of some initial review of the corridor and the RFP site, and share some of their experiences and their observations. And then we can kind of go over some of the nitty-gritty details moving forward. Actually, while I say this, go over the agenda. The key dates and timelines, and kind of review where we're headed, and then we can speak to the community priorities. So without further ado, our community members here who generally join and have been active in this process to date are all listed on the left-hand side. Of course, we have our city partners in the Alderman's office as well. And I thank everyone who came out today. And if your name's not on the list or you want to be added, let me know. But this is our consultant team, as I understand it. And I just wondered, I could take my presentation down, and everyone, if you want, just a quick hello. If that's, let's not take too much time, but I want to make sure we put faces to names. I guess I'll start with BKL.
Hi, my name is Danielle Tillman. I am managing principal at BKL Architecture, and we're happy to be here today. John.
Hi, my name is John Gately. I'm a principal at BKL. I'm more focused on the design side of the projects.
We also have Will Erickson.
Hey guys, I'm Will Erickson. I'm an associate at BKL. I'm also a member of CCAC Burton Council.
And we have Daniela Sesma.
Hi, I'm Daniela Sesma. I'm an associate at BKL. Happy to be working with you all.
And Philip Shin.
Hi, my name is Philip Shin, associate at BKL.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. And Focus, Vic, I think you're there.
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Vic Howell here with Focus. We're a developer in GC here in Chicago, and I'm a development manager. So in this process, just assisting from that development side as a resource.
And JC, I saw you on the call as well. Or am I wrong?
No, I'm here. Thank you. This is JC Griffin. Pardon me. I'm currently in transit, but I'm a commercial real estate broker and advisor with commercial real estate firm Avis & Young. I'm here as part of the team and advising on market analysis.
Thank you. And our colleagues or our consultants here with White.
I'm Jim Mark. I'm an architect, but we're an architect, engineer, and construction company. I've been in our Chicago office for many years. We're here to help the team with constructability, costs. And Scott?
Hello, I'm Scott Steffes, project director at White, and I'll be working with Jim and our team on the cost as well.
Anyone from McGuire, Ingleski and Associates?
You got it.
Yes.
Erica Ruggiero with McGuire Gillespie Associates. I'm a principal and lead historic preservation specialist, and on the call is my colleague Sarah Haas, but she's also kind of in transit, so she doesn't have her video on, but she's also a principal and project architect.
Awesome. And I don't know if anyone joined us from CCAC. Hearing silence. Okay. But I just want to give a special shout out to them for coordinating all these fine folks who just introduced themselves and kind of keeping the ball rolling on this North Avenue RFP. If it wasn't for them, you all would not be engaged. So thank you. From maybe one day they'll hear that once I send this video out. But yeah, anyway, all right, cool. Let me get my presentation back on the screen and we'll go on. Alrighty, so Nadia, we spoke a little bit prior to the meeting. I wanted to give you the first shot at sort of updating us on the corridor manager program and anything related to the RFP that you had been facilitating with the stakeholders.
Right. Well, according to the last internal meeting that we had, we're developing a survey from that's going to be shared with the community, so we can kind of get their feedback about the elements that we are proposing to have in this development. We just want to, know what is their priority in those elements. Since it might be kind of difficult to have all of them in the project, so or in the development. So we just want to kind of get a feedback from them, so then we can compare to the survey that is going to be done after the models are presented to the community. So we're in the process of finishing the survey, and we'll be sending it out through our networks this week.
Wonderful, and that would be very appreciative. I don't want to jump the gun too much, but we're having our visioning workshop with you guys and the broader community next week. And I think the more information that we can bring into preferences and community priorities, the better. I think, again, don't want to get too far into this now, but I think as you'll see when we go into some of the findings, we want to make sure we can deliver on a project that meets your needs, but also is feasible and developable. And to that end, I think it's always just kind of good to sort of ground ourselves in why we're here and what we're doing, especially when we talk about the corridor in more detail, as we're going to do today. Again, our goal is and has always been broadly within Invest Southwest to reactivate neighborhood cores that have historically served as focal points for the community. And I think in this specific case, we want to do that with specific context to the community's needs, as always, right? And and activating the core, it will require us to be sensitive to how that affects people who live here currently, and the idea of gentrification. Basically saying we don't want that, and we want to make sure that we're sensitive to that desire to keep residents in the neighborhood and make sure that through this activation, it is something that they can really use and it's accessible. And what's different about this as opposed to our other RFP is that we're not just laying out basic details of the site. We are trying to illustrate the desired urbanism and programming and approach that a community would want to see, and also show what available incentives are and what the potential price tag for this investment will be, to give developers in the broader community a clearer focus on what they need to deliver. But ultimately, they will be the ones who deliver the end product. So I think when we talk through this and we consider that survey, Nadia, that you mentioned, we have to strike a balance between being clear in our goals and intentions, but also not too prescriptive, because the development community who responds to the RFP are ultimately going to be the ones who meet the goals set forward in the RFP. So we can certainly.
You know what, Mike? Can you please elaborate on that point? What I understood you saying was that yes, it's good to have input, but at the end of the day, developers are going to be carrying the ultimate design and decision in terms of what's going to go in there? Is that
no? Well, I guess I'm. Let me clarify. If the developer doesn't meet the goals of the community, I don't see any reason why they would be selected as part of the RFP process. But what I am saying is that if we say we want a community center in a portion of this building, it will be their job to deliver that to us. Do you understand? So we can say we want a community center in the Pioneer Bank building, for example, and would like that community center to be X, Y and Z in terms of, okay, it's going to be an empowerment center or like a co-working space or what have you. We can sort of set those preferences and priorities, but it'll be up to the actual respondents to find the partners and the people in order to make that a reality and manage it.
And see, that's where I get lost.
Yeah.
It seems to me that at some point then stakeholders are off the loop in terms of providing input in terms of what the community that worked for a whole year in terms of defining what they want, that at some point they're going to be kicked out.
Let's move on, because I think this might actually get to that point. So I want to move to this key dates here, because I think I'll address that in this this. So we have our visioning workshop, right, where we set these priorities, and we kind of drill down on a massing or a program that we think would be best. And then, through the month of March, the consultants here will refine that vision into what could be a marketable and a desirable package, right, which we'll release to an RFP on March 30th. Then for 3 months, the respondents will have time to come up with their plans, and those responses will be due back on June 30th. At that point, or after that point, probably in the month of July or early August, where we will hold community meetings with the stakeholders on this call and the broader community, where we will review and vet the designs and the program that the developers come back with. So to that sense, they're not going to be left out of the loop. They're going to be actually embedded in this process, because those designs and programs are going to be presented in front of you, aldermen, the stakeholders, everyone on this call, to ensure that these developers met the goals and priorities that were set out by the RFP. And like I said, if they don't meet those, then we'll have to set them aside, because I don't think they met the goals that we set forth through this process that we're doing right now.
Well, Mike, I think that words matters. And there are some code words that I take them in a way, in certain ways. So I guess, moving forward, to talk the language, I mean, the way that we communicate and use certain terms and words is very meaningful, because we have been taken for the ride for many, many years. I don't want this another example that we get to a point that we're going to be pushed out.
I understand that. For certain. And I don't want that.
And you know that I'm very unapologetic in expressing my views and my thoughts. And if I see at any point that this is going the wrong way, I will scream. I'd rather kill it than to move on something that will be contrary to what we've been talking about. Just because some developers have a view, that esoteric view that is inconsistent with what we want.
Understood. And we've got, like I said, we want to make sure that the community's vision for this RFP is the vision that's delivered on June 30th. And I think that's as clear as I can be. But just to kind of think more broadly about the schedule, or more long term, once that evaluation period is what I'm referring to. That's that evaluation period that's done in concert with the community to determine, who the winning RFP respondent will be. But from there, once a winning RFP respondent will be selected, they'll have to go through negotiations with the city for public subsidies, and then hopefully wrap those up as soon as possible to begin construction in the next calendar year. So if there's no other questions or concerns about the timeline, and thank you, Alderman, for sharing that, your concerns as well. Let's kind of dig a little bit into some of the initial kind of documents that our consultants produced. And I don't know if Danielle, you kind of want to discuss anything, and I can assist and elaborate as needed, or anybody else from the team for that matter.
So myself and my colleague Daniela Sesma will kind of walk through some of these slides. But on this first one here, what we have done is taken a look at an overview of what we understand as the North Avenue corridor. And we reviewed and mapped the different program, as you can see, retail, institutional, et cetera, as it is lining the corridor, as well as it, kind of encapsulates and relates to the residential areas, which are seen here in blue. And what we found was, a very vibrant and active corridor. And if we go to the next slide, that also helped us to kind of identify nodes along the corridor using vehicular connectivity, transportation, and then the adjacencies that we saw in the previous slide. So here acknowledging at North Pulaski and North Avenue, our primary node, but also acknowledging at Costner as well as at Kinsey, these gateway nodes into the North Avenue corridor.
Actually, I'll take this one, Danielle. This is something I put together from some of the facts that were shared by JC regarding the neighborhood profile. So we kind of took a slice of the neighborhood kind of within a mile of that North and Pulaski corridor, considering that could be like a generally considered a trade area or the area most adjacent to it, and speaks broadly to the Humboldt Park community as well. And what I found, looking at the data was that population has decreased by 10,000 in the last 10 years, and household sizes have shrunk, I should say. So what we're seeing is then people leaving the neighborhood and families or households getting smaller, which would indicate that families are leaving the neighborhood, and you have maybe more singles or young couples maybe living together in it. What you also see is that rent has increased 60% at least between 2011 and 2019, so roughly over the last decade. But we haven't really seen an uptick in new housing to sort of maybe meet that rising demand. So I think all those indicators to me lend itself, kind of indicate to me that gentrification is a real issue. And it's obviously that's an issue because it's been brought up repeatedly in this meeting, but you can see it in the data. And another thing I want to highlight was the household income. This is, for a family of 3 or so, the average household size in the neighborhood. You see that the median for Chicago is kind of well above the median for this area. So again, when we speak to the needs of the community, we need to keep in mind that they have to kind of address these kind of negative trends in population and kind of families leaving, and try to stem the tide of rising rent, and while also being accessible to the income levels of the community, which are below that of your downtown Chicago and your North Side neighborhoods. So yeah.
So in this slide, we want to talk about the site context of our site, which is comprised by the existing Pioneer Bank building at 4000 West North Avenue and the adjacent vacant lot just north of it, which is 1614 to 34 North Pulaski Road. If you want to go to the next one. The existing Pioneer Bank building is approximately 7 feet in height with approximately 49,000 square feet of built construction. The vacant lot on 1614-34 North Pulaski Road is approximately 33,500 square feet. We also located the surrounding existing uses to the site to understand the context of this vibrant and primary node. Next one, please. And then here you can see a site plan to further understand the site, its dimensions and areas, so that we may use this as we move forward. The site areas will also inform the size of the development on the site. With the existing zoning of the vacant lot, there is a height limit of 50 feet. If more height is required or desired, there would need to be a process to change the zoning, which would allow for more area and consequently more height, being mindful of the context of the neighborhood and the characteristics. Next one, please. And what is most important about the site is the historic Pioneer Trust and Savings Bank building. It was built in 1925. It's 5 stories above ground and 1 below, and it's currently vacant and has been a landmark building since 2012. The building gross floor area is, as we mentioned before, approximately 49,000 square feet, and the annex building to the west of it is approximately 8,375 square feet. Next one.
Yeah, so this is Erica, I wonder if maybe you could help chime in as well regarding the kind of historic nature of this building. And these are some examples I pulled from a list that you put together of some sort of adaptive reuse ideas for these historic bank buildings. What you see on the upper left is a kind of a co-working office space. Of course, the Stony Island Arts Bank down in on the south side is a great example of a sort of an arts and community use that was able to take advantage of a former bank building. You see on the upper right, this is a kind of like a restaurant lounge area. And on the lower left is the Sheridan Bank and Trust building, which is an uptown, which again, it was used for office spaces and the like. So again, there's a wide range of options that we can use to kind of think about, what that community space or that functional space would be in the historic Pioneer Bank building. I wanted to share this one on the lower right too, which is actually not a bank at all. It's the Woods Cathedral in Detroit. I think it's interesting to note because it shows a design that they really didn't do much rehab at all to the interior of the space. They sort of left it raw and exposed and as is, but they still kind of turned it into an arts and community focused space. So I think as we think through what the potential of the Pioneer Bank space would be, we don't necessarily have to have it all figured out in the sense that it needs to be perfect and pretty. It could just be given over to a wide range of community uses in a fairly raw and way, and so that over time maybe it can grow as the community grows and its needs can adapt and shift. So, but speaking specifically to like the landmarks portion of it, and I know Erica, you probably didn't want me to share this, but I thought it was really useful. In terms of just kind of showing what was landmarked for the building and what isn't, and how it can be modified and adapted.
Do you want me to talk a little bit to that, Mike?
Yes, if you could, I would appreciate it.
Sure. So as Daniela mentioned, the building and part of the interior was landmarked in 2012. And so that landmarking includes all the exterior elevations, including the roof lines. But there is some room for alterations at the north facade, which is the rear facade, as well as the west facade above that annex building. So the 3rd and 4th floors. The annex is not included in the landmarking. But as in the yellow, there's some additional kind of research that needs to be completed because as part of the development, we would assume that the developer may want to utilize the historic tax credit, which federally is a 20% tax credit, as well as the state tax credit, which is an additional 25% tax credit. And so the National Register, which is related to the federal and state tax credits and not necessarily local landmarking. So it's a separate federal listing for historic recognition. They may want to include the annex as well as some of the other interior spaces that were not included in the City of Chicago landmarking. So the City of Chicago landmarking includes the banking hall, which relates specifically to the overall spatial volume, as well as that front lobby off of North Avenue. The landmark ordinance was actually very forward thinking and had an adaptive reuse in mind when it was landmarked, and specifically the landmark ordinance does allow for alterations to the banking hall, including the addition of vertical partitions. So like in those examples Mike had shown on the previous slide, where you see new elements integrated into the banking hall spaces, whether it's interior, like the interior partitions, as long as those new elements do not damage any historic material, then they would hypothetically be allowed under the Chicago Landmark Ordinance. The Chicago Landmark Ordinance also does allow for the removal of the bank teller stations and the check cashing tables, given that at least one is preserved in the bank building. The others could be removed or relocated. And it also does allow for that one teller station that would be kept to be modified as long as the public facing portion of it is retained. So the landmark ordinance was obviously very, as I said, forward thinking and lenient with what can happen to the interior space, given that just at least one example of those interior features which showcase the banking hall as a banking hall are retained. A few other elements, like I said, with the National Register, which would have be impacted by those federal and state tax credits include the vaults that are along the north facade, as well as some of those auxiliary circulation features like the other 3 staircases. We just don't know at this time if the National Park Service, which regulates the federal tax credit, would allow for their removal, just because the building's not on the National Register as of right now. It'd be something the developer would undertake. We're hoping to get into the bank building in the next few weeks, and I would be able to provide some advice on if those historic features retain integrity, and then we could provide an educated assumption if they would be possibly required to be retained.
I have a question related to the historic designation. Maybe about 5 years ago, a lot of the elements, like the brass elements on the check cashing part, as well as the tellers, were scrapped. So the question is, if some of those things are still under preservation, would the developer have to redo those things, given that they had been taken away or scrapped? Would they have to put the brass ornamentation on there as a replacement, is what I'm saying? Because some of those historical elements were taken, is what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah, to my knowledge, the landmark ordinance does not require you to restore something that is lost. That's kind of a unique situation, though I'm sure the Historic Preservation Division has dealt with it before, especially in these buildings that have been vacant for some time. But my understanding is it's the preservation of what is there. So it could be up to the developer if if some of those elements are missing from the one teller station that would need to be preserved. If the others are removed and relocated, it'd be up to them if they wanted to restore it to its full kind of historic design.
Thanks, Erica. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a question. This is Nadia. Erica, just so I understand what you were saying. So you're saying like the landmark is currently only in Chicago and it's not registered nationally, right?
Correct.
Right. And so if the developer wants to use the historic tax credit and then the state tax credit, which one is 20%, the other one is 25%, they would have to, there's more restrictions as of what they can do with the building. Is that?
It's not necessarily more restrictions. This Chicago landmark ordinance follows the Secretary of the Interior standards, which is the standard set by the National Park Service under the tax credit regulations. And so it is the same standards. It's just that the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office may see additional value in preserving other interior elements that the city of Chicago did not include in the landmark ordinance.
Okay.
Those are all the areas in yellow, potentially.
Yeah.
Mike, also, I wanted to bring up an issue that we talked about this morning. We did say at the meeting that it's possible for a potential developer to submit an RFP showing no interest necessarily in keeping the indoors first floor landmark. Is that correct? Because they're not seeking those subsidies that otherwise they could get. Is that correct? We did talk about this morning.
We did, yeah. So Erica, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is, like you said, you can make vertical partitions and add architectural elements to the existing landmark that don't impact the overall. So you can basically still view those elements, right?
Yeah, you did say that the morning. That doesn't have to be repeated.
But I guess is the question: can we remove the landmark? As far as I know, that's generally not done, and
yeah, I would just
yeah.
I would jump in quickly and say, so obviously if the, to the first point, if the developer did not want to pursue the federal or state historic tax credit, then those areas in yellow become a moot point because they're not landmarked. And so they would have open range to, you know, potentially demolish the annex and demolish those other interior elements that are not landmarked if they didn't proceed with the National Register listing and the federal and state historic tax credit. For de-landmarking the interior, reading through the landmark ordinance, there is no current procedure in the City of Chicago landmark ordinance for de-landmarking fully or partially a City of Chicago landmark. So I think that would be a whole different kind of, I guess, undertaking for this RFP, because it would require the Chicago ordinance to change. There is in the Chicago ordinance if the developer can submit an economic hardship, and then it's on them to prove that they cannot, that the landmarking prevents them from developing this building with a viable reuse, but there's no de-landmarking process that I saw in the landmark ordinance.
But it seems like as long as you're kind of preserving the exterior and the columns and sort of that entry hall, and then the upper mezzanine level, same idea. Like there is some flexibility regarding the interior volume of that space.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's where it also comes into play, where the city specifically said, you know, there are these elements like the teller stations that we realize may have a negative impact on the redevelopment of the building, depending on, you know, obviously what the desired use is, new use. And so that's why they allowed for more leniency with potentially removing all but one of the teller stations, and then those check cashing tables, which are in the center of the banking hall. And so, and on the previous slide where Mike had shown the Sheridan Trust, the Sheridan Bank and Trust. So just like in Pioneer, I know the Sheridan Bank and Trust had teller stations and check cashing tables. So with obviously with that rendering, you see that banking hall redeveloped and none of those historic interior elements removed. And I believe that was just approved by the commission in November of 2020.
I have a question about the blue open to alteration. Does that indicate that this building can be connected to a potential building on the vacant lot? Because you could go through okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's the landmark ordinance does allow for new openings, window openings, door openings at the rear and west facade, as well as I would assume it's pretty typical. You can add an addition to a rear secondary facade. That's pretty standard with developing historic buildings, that's allowed. And so the only issue is, you know, can the entire north facade kind of be altered depending on if that developer wanted to seek federal or state tax credits? And if they did seek those tax credits, how would those alterations impact those areas in yellow if they were required to be maintained in some capacity?
And to be clear, the top 2 floors are completely open to change. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The top floors. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't put that map up, but yes, otherwise open and available. So yeah, this is I think a question for the community and the responding developers, how they want to treat this landmark space. There's certainly advantages to pursuing a historic tax credit, and there'd be disadvantages as well. And that's something we will think through in consultation with you all, and potentially try to model that in the RFP. I think that's a great overview, and I really appreciate that insight. I think it would be helpful then to, I know, Nadia, you said you were working on a survey to sort of suss these out a little more detail and rank and prioritize them. But, kind of given what you heard today or and what's to come, I don't know if anyone from the community wants to share any of these priorities or reframe them in a way that that you think would be helpful or otherwise important to highlight and show.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your
sorry.
or the consultants.
No, this is for you all. I guess I'd like to spend the last 15 minutes sort of like in a dialogue, if we can, with the consultants here, because we have this list here, and I've shared that with them, and they're well aware, and and to them, I think the idea is try to see what we can dedicate and where among this list of wishes here, and but while we're all in the same room together, I just thought it'd be helpful to sort of have a dialogue and discuss these and why they're important to you, and where you think they might fit best.
Right. Well, first of all, one of the main things that we would like to have is it's a Latino organization as the anchor in the bank, basically because we are fighting against gentrification. So, and I think that that's one of the things that concerned Roberto Maldonado was that, like the loose language used in that kind of gave the way to think that the developer might present something to in their RFP, and then later on, if things change and then they cannot kind of continue with what they had proposed, then they might just change what was presented. And I don't know, like if, I mean, it's a difficult process because unless we like have a partner, a developing company that it's a partner that understands where we come from and is willing really to support us and in seeing that the need of having this anchor institution in there, then we're going to be in the same situation as anybody can come say they're going to do this, but then not given the opportunity to let a Latino organization to rent from them, to lease. So so that's one of the reasons that we really need to work this out, or we would like it to work out. So there's an institution that is Latino, that represents our community, and it's able to be in the first floor of the bank.
Mike, I think that's a critical point in the selection of, as you draft the RFP, I guess, it's going to be public for anybody that wants to submit a proposal. But what I need to keep bringing up to this group, and obviously this is the second time that I meet the group of the consultants, it's very crucial that you understand that this is very different to maybe what you have worked on the south side and on the west side, only because this is a gentrifying community. And I hope that you really ingrain this into your minds and hearts. And this is one community that we don't want it to go away from us on another sweep of gentrification because it's so appealing and attractive, and people with not with the interest of our community at hand will come and submit proposals, and you will be swayed, the consultant group, to go along with that. I do believe that on the south side, on the west side, the examples that you have presented so far, Mike, these are communities that they're welcome. They welcome the type of concept, and they'll even welcome gentrification because they have none. They have none. And I know that some of my colleagues from the south side, they really want some gentrification. Not us. We don't want more. We don't want any more gentrification. So in presenting ideas and concept, and you keep making reference to the south side development that you guys just finished working, the one on the west side. I mean, that they're nice and they're beautiful, but that doesn't necessarily meet our needs and our standard. We want to make sure that this is clearly a Latino theme driven concept. And if the consultants cannot embrace this, then they should not be part of this. And if they cannot find developers that would truly embrace this, they should not be part of this. And this is not open for all. This is it's a narrow scope in terms of what we want to accomplish. And I have seen too much of gentrification going out in this neighborhood, and I don't want to be part of this project that could be potentially good for our community to run away from our hand. And if I start seeing this happening, like I said before, I'd rather kill it than to keep moving it away just because it's beautiful and aesthetically nice.
And I think that kind of going along with what Roberto is saying, I mean, I think in this situation, as he said, like it might be thinking out of the box because it's something that maybe there's no hasn't happened before with other communities. And so how can whoever is the developer, how can they make sure that a Latino organization is the one that is going to, or mostly Latino organizations are the ones that are going to be leasing that space. So again, maybe that has not happened in any other quarters where the city had to kind of figure this new situation or agreement, but maybe there could be some type of fiscal organization within the community that kind of monitors that part of leasing in agreement with the developer. Again, I mean, this is all probably thinking outside the box because it's not, it hasn't happened before, but it's something that.
And also, Mike, to really try to focus, there is some background somewhere.
Give me a second. I'm going to mute everybody, and then and then maybe you can unmute yourself. Hold on.
Can you hear me, Mark?
It's a bit choppy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so so it leads me to my next question as to why can we not pursue to bid out this project among Latino developers? Why does it have to be open up at large? I mean, if you're going to see the fight from us, fighting concepts that are not consistent with what our views of being a Latino theme oriented development, then why don't we just make efforts to find a Latino developer or more than one that could joint venture undertake this? Mike?
Yeah, I hear you. Sorry, it's just going off mute. Well, our RFP documents, the other RFP documents do speak to submission requirements. So, what the requirements would be of those who obviously respond. and they can, and we can speak to the who, you know, who we'd want to see, you know, we can try to establish some criteria of who can respond. Although I would caution against that. Maybe we say anyone can respond, but if you want to be selected, you should have X, Y, and Z participation from the Latino community. You should have some sort of group involved in your program who are going to own a portion or of this property, who are, you know, Latino organization. I think that would be probably maybe the more effective idea, is that, you know, anybody can respond, but unless you meet some of the criteria of ownership, of a certain percentage of affordable housing, you know, a dedicated community space, you know, with you wouldn't be selected, essentially.
What do you mean by certain percentage affordable housing?
Well, I know it's 100%, but I'm just saying, I know you made that clear. I was just being, you know, more broad in my language.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, that is that a Latino developer can more easily understand a Latino theme concept for this area than a non-Latino developer would at any time. And I just want to throw that out.
Appreciate it. Bill, you said you wanted to say something?
Yeah, a couple of things. So Nadia we have all been working for almost a year on this, right? And we've taken the stakeholders, which are representatives of the community, and we've taken their ideas and put it together in an element. Nadia did a fantastic job with putting the elements in there color coded. There's a lot of things that overlap as far as what we want as stakeholders, right? There's also, with Nadia's help, a couple of stakeholders have put together a survey. We are representatives of the community as stakeholders, but yet we have to drill down deeper into the neighborhood and what they want, what kind of things do they want. So we put together this survey to get towards those elements. We definitely want to do everything that pushes against gentrification. We want to do everything, whether it be a Latino-based organization as far as an identity piece to push back against gentrification. We want things that are more community-owned, as I think one called Calderon talked about, that are community-owned, that keep it within the realm of like community land trust or community owning those things. We also, this is from our organization, Nobel Neighbors, we want the institutions that are in this space to be not only Latino, but we serve Black and Latino constituents within our community, and that's what this community looks like: Black, Puerto Rican, and Mexican. And so we want things that are going to serve the community. So we're putting together that survey, and we want it to be something that the community ultimately decides on. And so we'll have ready shortly.
Yeah. Hello. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, this is Venus Jackson from Nobel Neighbor. I just want to talk about the survey that Bill is talking about. I will be picking it up today, and I'm going to take it to our school that's in our district and let the parents and the community to be a part of the survey. And I also will be taking it to the alderman office and the police department. So the survey will be going out very soon. And as I get it back, I'll get it back to Bill and Mindy, and I'm going to let them know that we need this as soon as possible, just out so we can, stay on, connection with what the city is trying to do.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We are coming up on time. I don't want to cut this short. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time and just let people know that we are coming close to time. So if there's any points you want to raise, please do so now.
I just want to mention that, you know, like something that we did, or that community did in 2019 when the community wanted to go ahead and continue doing the Puerto Rican festival at the park. So at that point, several organizations from the community got into a Juan, remind me if I'm wrong. What was the name of the committee? It's like it's a board of trustees. Charlie, are you there? What was it called? Like the main board that was overseeing the festivals committee.
Called
So,
La Casa Puertorriqueña.
well, it wasn't. Well, yeah, I guess so. But
You know, and now it's the Puerto Rican Civic Society.
Right. So at that time, you know, the several organizations from the community kind of got together to be able to be the fiscal agent for the committee that was going to be doing the Puerto Rican festival that year. So that's, you know, kind of what we mean. I mean, there's different ways that we can kind of get the community involved into securing what's going to be in there, working together with the developer. But we can only do that if it's somebody who understands where we're coming from.
Understood. I think we'll have leverage as a department in a community. When it comes down to obviously selecting the winning RFP respondent, and this project will be heavily publicly subsidized. There's no doubt about that, and so that is our point in which we can ensure that if they're going to receive city subsidies, that they deliver on the promises that they made at the start of the whole process when they respond to the RFP.
I think that is also my worry, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that it could backfire on us as well, because the city, as it goes very deep into this and committing public funding just to get the project out, or maybe your administration is no longer there, many things can happen if it's in the hands. I don't trust city government. I don't trust any government for that matter, because we have been taken for a ride for too long. And so we need to have very clear safeguard that whether it's this administration or the following administration, that whatever is agreed upon, it will be protected.
I hear you. And I hope our consultants do as well. I think I don't want to speak for the community, but I think I can speak at least from our position that we, as I tried to make clear, like our job is to try and make the vision that you staked out here and in previous meetings, a reality, and something that is can be seen by the development community and answered, so that everyone here on this call and in the broader Humboldt Park area can benefit. I see a question or a hand maybe raised.
I think there was a question from Antoine McHenry regarding, whether if we're just pushing for a Latino presence in the development.
Yeah, so, that was my question, because I've lived over here for 34 years, and I'm with Nobel Neighbors, the president of the board. And I guess from what I'm hearing, this is my first time on the call because I'm typically at work. And I could be wrong. I'm hearing more of a push for one particular presence as opposed to a community-wide mixture. Definitely understand gentrification and the concerns, because we've seen around the city people pushed out. But I guess that's probably my only concern, that it would be more of a mixture of presence. And of course, the statistics, the numbers change every couple of years, as I've been over here since I was 11. And in regards to more Black, more Latino presence, people moving in and out, I understand that. But I guess my only concern is that if it's not being pushed towards one particular racial demographic.
Well, I can, as alderman of the 296 ward, I'm going to react to, I'm going to give you my perspective. The two other projects that are going south and west have not been, we have not been invited to have any sorts of diversity in those two projects. This is a predominantly Hispanic community, and we want to make sure that it will be a predominantly Latino theme redevelopment along North Avenue. If you drive up and down North Avenue, on the target area is predominantly a Latino area, except for the signs of gentrification. And I don't accuse the African American community of being the ones that are gentrifying us. You and I know better, right? And but yes, I definitely would push that it would be predominantly Latino, and obviously my friends from the African American community to be a driving force as well. But we don't want this to be. I'm not going to go along with this like a kumbaya that we all going to be treated each other equally, because that is not the way that gentrification has treated us historically in this community. I'm sorry to say.
And then and I think, like, we are referring to the institution to be Latino, the one that is anchored in that building, but that doesn't mean that the idea is that we're trying for several organizations to, once the development is ready, we can work on different ways of having a co-working space. So other organizations within the community that are African American, that are from another ethnicity, can participate together in the project. But as an anchor organization, we are heading for a Latino institution on the main floor of the bank. But that doesn't mean, again, that we're not going to work with any other ethnicities. I mean, our Puerto Rican community has always been in solidarity with the Mexican community, which is Latino, and also the African American community. And that's something that we have really close to our heart. And you can see that in many of the services that we provide, at least, in the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. We service African Americans and Latinos in the majority. So we intend to continue with that solidarity in this development as well.
Thank you, Nadia. I think might need to make that the final word just for everyone's time, although there's no need to cut the conversation short. If there's anything you want to get in front of me so I can get in front of the consultants as we move forward, just email or call. As I said, our visioning workshop, where we will be going through, some of the massings and design that respond to the needs that you expressed today, will be happening next Tuesday. You see it here on the screen. I'll be sharing a Zoom link with everyone today, and I hope that you can share it more broadly with the community members and your stakeholders individually, so we get a broad community participation in that event. And then, we will at very least see each other again, in March, closer to the end of when we're going to release the RFP, so we can make sure that we've kind of, we've done our job and done it well. But that again, this is not the last. The RFP release is not the last step. I would consider essentially the first step. The next and more critical step is that we get responses back, and that those responses meet the needs expressed in the RFP, and that we work with the winning RFP respondent to deliver those to the community, and hopefully restore the bank to its former glory, and build affordable housing, and have community ownership and space, and make that sort of these dreams and ideas a reality. So I think we can. I'm optimistic. I think our team is so far, which has been shown to me, really great and great at listening and hearing these concerns and priorities. So I'm glad they're here to join today. And I just want to thank everyone for their time.
Thank you, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mike. See you next time.
Yeah, thank you. All right, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.